In today's painting, I learned a new technique from the ground up, and make sure to stick around to the end, where I'll be challenging myself by combining everything I've learned into an epic dragon. Hey guys, welcome to Jared's Junk Drawer. I'm JR, this is Dukina, and this is Boots. As we get started, let me just say, we're into double-digit subscribers now. I know it's a small milestone, but I'm still really excited, so I want to say thank you to each and every one of you. If you enjoy my paintings, please consider leaving a like. I'm starting to really take note of how much each and every like really does affect the YouTube algorithm, and helps more people get a chance to see my content. Well, as of the release of this video, according to the prop watch that I am realizing I completely forgot to put on, we are halfway through October, and I haven't even gotten around to an Inktober challenge yet. So today, I thought it'd be pretty cool if we learned how to doodle. Sounds simple enough, right? But it's still outside my normal art style, and I'm sure it's going to pose its own unique challenges. And in the spirit of Inktober, I figured I'd at least start off in actual pen and paper. So my pen set should be around here somewhere. Ah, here it is. Well, that's been sitting there a bit longer than I thought. This should be a lot of fun. Let's get started. Oh damn, I forgot to get paper. Starting off, I've taken a look around the internet and I found a few different methods and techniques for how to approach doodling. But I am a beginner at this, so I want to start off with the basics. I began with using my Copic multi-liner brush pen. It provides a thicker outline for drawing the boxes. For this, you can probably use a marker or even a Sharpie as an alternative. Hey, look at those amazing drawing skills. Yeah, that's sarcasm. I guess I might want to use a ruler on the next page. Jumping into the patterns, I tried using the brush pen to fill in the designs, and very quickly I realized that wasn't going to work. I found it to be a little bit difficult to maintain a consistency on the thickness of the line, so by the third box, I swapped it out for my 0.5 multi-liner. For that, you can probably use a regular pen as your alternative, as long as you can find one that doesn't smudge easily. Although some of that does come down to what paper you're using. As for me, I went with my sketchbook. Pens work great on it, and it's thick enough that I knew I wouldn't have to worry about any kind of bleed through. My focus on this worksheet is that I need to learn to experiment with more patterns, which to me is the whole purpose of this exercise. I'm starting with abstract patterns, something to ease me into the technique. Initially, I started with patterns centering around lines and dots, and as I filled out my little squares, I found myself relaxed and enjoying the process. It was a lot of fun to zone out and just draw whatever came to mind. And, you know, not all the patterns were winners, but I don't think it's important that they are. This process is more about finding patterns that you like. And slowly but surely, through trial and error, I was starting to get a handle on how I wanted to approach this technique. Only halfway through the first page, and I started noticing the real importance of spacing. So I did start to use a pencil to outline some of the designs that I was having a little more trouble with. As I got towards the end of my first worksheet, aside from starting to run out of ideas of different ways to assemble lines, dots, dashes, and circles, I had started to find several design elements that I liked. But probably one of the ones that turned out the most versatile was this little stitchwork one, as I could work it into most other patterns as an accent. Okay, first page all done. I'm decently happy with this, but I know I can get better. I'm not expecting to have mastered a new technique with like one worksheet. I, however, would like to be able to gain enough understanding by the end of the day to be able to present something I can be happy with. So I'm probably going to put together a couple more before I move on to the final project. I'm finding out it's useful to not overthink any one of the patterns. It seems like it's more productive to throw 10 ideas at a page in hopes that one of them might stick than it is to overwork a single concept until I like it. I'm going to get started on my second page here. Let's go with the same layout, but I'm not going to make the same mistake I did on the first one. I'm going to actually bring out a ruler and take my time with the prep. Although that might end up being a bit boring, so I will be using the power of editing. Wow, that's like magic. Can I just do that with everything? Just like snap my fingers and just have a finished artwork? No? Well, fine. I guess I might as well get started then. There's a decent amount of variety when it comes to density within doodling techniques. So on page 2, I started thinking about how patterns could interact with one another, some allowing for relief while others act to darken a section and add contrast. And it definitely contributes to a final product if you pay attention to what lines might need to be a little bit thicker. If used just right, you can use a thicker line to really make a pattern pop nicely. I also relaxed my constraints from what I had had on the first page, where I stuck to mostly just lines and dots. Instead, now allowing myself some more creative freedom, and that was the right choice. On this page, more of the designs turned out creative and unique as a result. Like this one. I used to draw these all the time back when I was in elementary school. You start off in the middle of the page, and with one continuous line, you fill out the whole area without ever allowing the line to cross over itself. From there, you can always add in more self-imposed rules. Like, for example, on this one, I figured I would make the pattern more boxy. You know, at this stage of the painting, I was going to talk about my shaky hands and how I managed to still paint and draw with them. But I don't want to give the wrong impression. As you can clearly see, it's still an issue for me. I do have a few tips and tricks that have made it easier. First off, if your hand is having trouble sticking to the surface you're working on, wear a glove. They sell these nice little gloves online that are meant for exactly that purpose. Second, plan ahead. If I'm drawing a line with a curve, I like to look ahead and think about point A to B to C, and visualize the path I'll take. That way, when I'm drawing the line, I can focus more on the pressure and speed that I'm using. And third, rotating your canvas and/or yourself around the canvas is useful to make sure you're not working against the natural curve of your arm. There's also some other tricks that might not be quite as useful when it comes to ink work, but can still be quite helpful overall. Like when I'm painting a line, I'll often use several shorter strokes rather than one long one. But probably the most helpful thing I can say is to not worry too much about the mistakes. If I were to count up the errors that I've made today alone, I'd already be in triple digits, so I don't let it get to me, and I just keep painting. Speaking of painting, I think it's time to attempt something more complex. On my last page before the big design, I wanted to find out how I would handle putting together a bunch of patterns onto one sheet. So from edge to edge, I divided it up. And I already ran into my first two mistakes. First, my hand slipped on the bottom right as I started getting close to the edge of the page. No big deal, just blob it in and make it look like I meant to do that. And next, I had no idea what I wanted to paint. I was staring into the blank void and nothing substantial was coming to me. So to deal with this issue, it took me a few minutes. I went back in the sketchbook and pulled out the 2 worksheets I just finished. And that was exactly the kick I needed. Having them in front of me meant I could reference the work I had just done to fill out this page. I could also see where I could make improvements to certain patterns. For example, this time when I drew the chains, I outlined in pencil the perspective that each one would have in advance. That way they didn't end up looking too loose. And the design worked perfectly. Having the chains added a spatial depth to the pattern that was pretty cool and made the whole thing pop nicely. By the time I finished that pattern, I already knew that I wanted to fill out the section to the side with my single line doodle, for lack of a better name. And that was looking good right up until my hand started cramping. But I kept going and I moved on. The first thing I noticed getting into the floral patterns is how much the flower's design reminds me of that kid's toy. The one where when you would look into it, you would see all those crazy patterns. What were those called again? Oh yeah, a kaleidoscope. The way the fractal patterns form around a central point reminds me of what you might see through a kaleidoscope. And while overall floral patterns might not quite be my cup of tea, I still had a lot of fun experimenting with what I could do with them. In the last section, I really didn't plan this pattern ahead of time. I kinda just winged it. And for a pattern I improvised on the spot, it almost ended up looking like a scaly monster mouth. But maybe that's just me. I'm still very happy with the results regardless. I think it turned out to be a pretty cool pattern. And with that, now having really gotten into this for the last several hours, I think I'm ready for something more challenging. After all, I wouldn't feel right leaving this episode as is. I haven't really pushed myself, and a Inktober challenge, I feel like it should challenge me. So I'm going to swap over to my tablet, where I'll be taking everything I've learned today and put it together in one final epic artwork. Wow. This turned out amazing. Looking at this finished product, I can say that I am really glad that I learned how to doodle from the ground up. A lot of the basic steps that I learned at the beginning of this episode just proved to be invaluable by the time things got more complex. This has been a rewarding experience, and I'm just so happy and just like thrilled with the way this painting turned out. And not just with this dragon, like I can look at this dragon and say I love a lot of the detailing on this. But that's not all I'm really happy with. Every single part of this project, I've enjoyed the process from beginning to end. Like, this turned out really cool too, and I had my doubts in there that it was all going to turn out right at the beginning, but I'm still looking back at this and quite happy. With the dragon itself, I also love how I decided to go with like a Japanese type theme. It adds an extra layer of depth to the dragon and a connectivity that pulls all the patterns at least somewhat together and forms a nice framework to build an artwork on. I think I made the decision to go with the Japanese theme sometime around when I finished up the bamboo panels here. And then I had that cherry blossom tree that incorporates all 4 seasons. I also made the choice to amputate the dragon's toe, 4th toe, that is, around like halfway through or so. I did some research. Turns out, most Japanese dragons are drawn with 3 toes, not 4. I was actually rather surprised at the importance of the number of toes, but I won't bore you all with too much exposition. I will, however, leave a link in the description down below to the article, in case any of you might want to read it. I found it to be quite a fascinating read. Then over here, there's the abstract pattern I put in that transitions pretty smoothly into the Great Wave. I didn't know what I wanted to put here at first because I was running out of ideas by the time I got here, but I thought it was kind of cool having the wind up here and like the little droplets of water coming off the Great Wave actually transition into little leaves, and the wind blows them into this pile. And I worked out perfect because I absolutely loved that pattern back when I first attempted it on my test sheet earlier today. Like, it turned out great here and I knew I wanted to reuse it. Wrapping up, when I got around to working on the background, I honestly did not know how I wanted to handle the rising sun in the background. Like, I have a few different versions, and I just wasn't sure which of the versions I really wanted to go with. So in the end, I ended up caving and ended up with like 3 different versions, all of which you can find up on my DeviantArt page. Which brings me to the next awesome news I have. I've finally got my DeviantArt account up and running. And one of the versions of the dragon you'll find up there is a completely clean slate. So for anyone who might want to fill the dragon in with your own patterns, please feel free to download that and use it as a starting point. I'd love to see what you can all come up with. If you want me to get a chance to see your version, make sure you post it to Instagram, and remember to both tag me in it and use the hashtag, let's see, what hashtag could we use? How about JRJD Doodle Dragon? Sound good? Today's episode has been a real blast. I've really enjoyed every step along the way, and I'd love to do something like this again sometime. My next episode I actually already have planned. I have recently, thanks to a friend's recommendation, gotten into a game called Genshin Impact. And you know, admittedly, I'm only a few days in, but I'm already hooked. So I thought it'd be pretty cool to do some fan art. And I've already gotten to work on some rough sketches. I really do hope to have it up for my next episode. I'll post updated pics of it on Instagram as I progress further. And if you guys end up liking that episode, I might end up doing some more fan art for Genshin. If anyone's got any ideas for future episodes, please leave a comment down below. I'd like to hear any suggestions you guys might have on what you might want me to paint next. But sadly, that does bring today's episode to a close. I'll have a couple links to some of my other episodes over here on the side. Over here, maybe let's have like my last episode where I had a commissioned character named Jennifer and she turned out beautiful. And down here is something YouTube thinks you might like. Thank you all for joining me, and I hope to see you next time.